What's up, YouTube? This is Mathwas927, and welcome to something different, something really different on the channel here today. As you can see, this is my computer screen. Yeah, whoa! This is the Behind the Universe episode on the Royal Rumble. And as you can see, here's my little script to make sure that I know that I cover all my bases. That's the thing, with something like this, I've never done a behind-the-scenes video like this before, so I do apologize if this might be a bit of a long episode, it might be a bit rambly, but I put these points here to try to keep it contained, so that way I don't wreck myself. But in case you're wondering, I'm actually recording this with my Elgato. This is something, the first time I've ever tried this, but I'm on my other computer here, and I'm recording through the HDMI port on the Elgato. I wasn't entirely sure if it was possible, but it is, so that is awesome. That allowed me to make this video. So if you guys were curious, just because I don't have like a screen capture program, although if there is like a free screen capture program, then I'll have to look into that in the future. But this, I don't know, this might work, because I've considered possibly doing Pokemon videos in the future, and with the way that works, I might end up doing it this way. Who knows? But I'm not going to waste your time any longer. As you can see, I have a random background music track here playing. So that's just for me to make sure that my audio is still good and my recording doesn't glitch up. So I'll lower that a little bit. Yeah, I do apologize. It's not exactly unscripted per se. Well, I mean, it is unscripted. These are just sort of bullet points to go off of. But because this is the first time that I've ever done this, I don't know, trying to come up with a structure of some sort. So as you can see, this is the timeline. Where do we even begin with this? Because you've got all sorts of things. You've got the countdown timers for the Rumble match. Of course, this is going to have spoilers for the Royal Rumble, so if you haven't seen it already, I'll put up a card around this point in the video, so you can go check out the Royal Rumble and then come back, because certain things that I talk about might spoil some things, so be sure that you're already familiar with the subject matter before you go into this video, because then we've got like replay things, and we've got all the different things that I have to do on this track with the in-match footage. You've got audio balancing down here, all sorts of different things. So I guess people, they ask me, you know, how do you edit a Universe Mode video? How do you, like, what do you do? What do you need to start? And of course, you need to be able to, of course, you have to have something to record gameplay footage, as my bullet point here brings up. So, like I said, I use the Elgato Game Capture HD. If you're gonna make, like, YouTube Universe Mode videos, if you're gonna make, well, really anything on YouTube, the videos should be in HD. If you can't afford it, then that's understandable, but at least just know that if you're recording something on like a crappy phone, and people have actually made phones work, there are certain setup videos on YouTube that you can always look up if you can't afford something like a capture card, because they are a little pricey, but with the way that phones are now, you can record in HD on your phone. But you just, if you can get a good enough setup for it, that could be a good beginning stage. But eventually you should try to save up if this is something that you want to try to do, not necessarily professionally, but something that you actually want to try to develop a substantial audience for. And if this is something that you're really invested in, then I would suggest that you get yourself a capture card. I use the Elgato. I've used it since 2013. It's been really reliable. I really enjoy it. It's pretty diverse, because it comes with a bunch of different setups. So I've been able to record PlayStation 2 gameplay, Nintendo GameCube gameplay, this computer footage that I'm doing right now. I managed to record that with the Elgato as well, and then of course PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4. So I'm going to be a little biased. The Elgato, that's what I've always used. No problems with it, so that's my suggestion. Although there are other capture cards out there, Hop, whatever the case may be. Then of course, when it comes to recording commentary, you want to have a good microphone. Again, if money is a bit of an issue, I can understand, but try to save up for it. That's what I ended up doing. When I started, I didn't have a microphone. I just kind of used my laptop's built-in mic. And, you know, for getting practice, that was good, but this was something that obviously I've been doing it for 4 years, so I needed to upgrade my tech. So now I use a Blue Snowball. It's a pretty cheap microphone for what it's worth. I've been using it again since 2013, and it's been really reliable. It records good sound. It's not the best microphone by far, but it's really good. You know, it works for making YouTube videos like this. I'll probably look to upgrade it at some point in the future, but I'm cheap, so I might try to ride this thing out as long as I can. So yes, technology obviously is the most important thing that you need. When it comes to recording commentary, as you can see, or as you saw at the beginning of the video, I use Audacity. I used to just record on my old laptop. I used to use a built-in program called, it was like Microsoft Sound Recorder or something. You had no options to do anything. Here in Audacity, you can at least like click the audio. It has all sorts of effects you can use. It's just really good. So maybe at the end of this video, I will kind of show the effects that I use, because what I usually do, well actually no, I could show you right now. Usually, now that I switched over to Audacity, I started to put some effects to my voice just to try to make it sound a bit louder, because before I always had to have my gameplay audio really low because my commentary was kind of quiet in the grand scheme of things. So like even if I was yelling, it was still kind of quiet. The levels were kind of all over the place, so that's why I had to do audio balancing like this. This is kind of, I mean, you see all of it. This is where I had to cut out. This was also, of course, before I had my pop filter. Pop filters are amazing. You should totally get one if you can. They're really cheap. I got this one for about $5, and it just blocks the sound, or not the sound, it blocks any air from going into the microphone. So if you make a loud P sound, that shouldn't have picked up on the microphone. But if I move the pop filter out of the way and I just say the word P, well, it's more of a letter. There's a bit of a difference because, you know, the microphone picks up that air and it just sounds awful. So then you'll have weird peaking bits here. Let me just go into one. So we got Rusev right now. Let me go ahead and so as you see, if I play it through real quick,
of becoming #1 contender for the world title.
Yeah, so already right there, you see the levels going up a little bit. Usually for levels, you want to try to keep that around, I usually try to keep it around 0, as long as it's kind of in that -3 to like +2 range. Usually that's what I go for. But if I actually remove the little effect that I have here, I'll just put that back up to 0. Well, close enough.
Of becoming #1
Then you see
contender.
it's a really big jump. So we go from 1 to 3. Let me just undo that. You don't want that. You want your audio to be pretty balanced. And in the past, my commentary used to be really low because with the way that I would balance my audio, I would always judge for the peaks, so that way nothing would ever go over that. Unfortunately, that meant that the rest of my commentary was way below the peaks, because those are kind of the outliers in your commentary. So I had some quiet commentary for a while, but I might make a video on this, because I know for W2K15, in my opinion, this should be limited to 3. I'm surprised I did not fast forward this. Usually, if it's a leverage pin battle, I speed it up or something. But usually, you know, now that I use Audacity, one effect that you can use is compressor. That really helps to bring out kind of it adds some extra volume to your voice. So a track, so there you see is a little bit of a peak. So this little section right there, those smaller parts, it just kind of, it makes them larger. It brings out sort of the volume in them, and it helps your audio stay consistent. And it's you know, it is able to hold its own over the gameplay audio, because as you can see here, this, I used some effects in Audacity. This is where I use compressor. So the audio, it's a bit wider. I believe that I had a sample of an audio track. I'm not sure if I still have it, but at one point I kept part of the commentary for this video. I have all of them, of course. Okay, there's the one. So as you saw, I had another clip there, which is with the effects. All these other ones have the effects, but I made sure to keep a clip that didn't have it. So if you take a look between the two different audio clips, as you can see, this one, I mean, just looking at the audio levels, this one's a lot louder. This one's kind of quiet. You still see the peaks, but I mean, there is still some peaking here a little bit, because that's bound to happen, especially when I didn't have a pop filter. But one thing that really helps to equalize the audio, well, first of all, noise reduction. That's a good effect to use if there's any background noise. It really helps when I'm at college, because occasionally, now if the background noise is pretty loud, it's not going to completely eliminate it, but just like perhaps someone's walking in the hallway or something and it's kind of just quiet footsteps or whatever, it does help to sort of remove that audio, so that, I mean, I'll still go through and edit parts out in post when I'm trying to work on the commentaries, but noise reduction, it really helps for, you know, sort of quiet background noise. If there's a fan running in the background, it'll bring that down, and it's just really good to use. But after usually the 3 effects that I use, I messed around a little bit in this commentary. I might have used something different than what I use now, because this was the first time that I really decided to experiment with all this stuff in Audacity. And naturally, I had to choose one of my longest videos to experiment with new audio, so the exporting time was kind of a pain. But usually what I use now, I'll use noise reduction, then compressor, and then I will use a limiter. Because a limiter, what it does is if it takes a super loud peak like that, it'll bring it down. So if you have, see like how that is a lot larger than everything else that I'm saying right now. The limiter, it sort of just caps it off at a certain point. So usually I'll use about a -6. That's what I use. So it brings everything down. And if you take a look back at this audio track, everything looks a lot more balanced. There are still some higher points than others, but overall, compared to this one over here, you see there's still a couple of points that really stand out. Here, not so much. They kind of blend in with the rest of the audio. So it's noise reduction, compressor, and limiter. That's what I use. Although, you know, your audio settings may differ. But what I used before I would use Audacity, one thing that I picked up on prior to that, when I was sort of experimenting with different audio effects to try to bring out sort of the bass in my voice, make me sound more like a professional commentator and not just some kid in his basement making videos. This is just sort of things that I had to experiment. I'm back at my house right now. I'm not at college. So this was the original effect that I use. It's kind of basic. I just brought out the bass in my voice. But track EQ and compressor, this is just a default setting that I have in Sony Vegas. In Audacity, I'm sure that there's more that I could use. There are bass boosts and treble boosts, which I forget what category. Oh, there it is, bass and treble. So it would be under there. You can use that to bring out the bass in your voice so it doesn't sound like, I don't know, it just sounds different. It makes you sound a lot, it adds power to your voice, I suppose. I can always try to play a clip at the end of the video, if I remember to do that. The first matchup in the second round of the Queen of the Ring tournament, and if you take a look at the brackets, Nikki Bella is going to be taking on Asuka. The first matchup in the second round of the Queen of the Ring tournament, and if you take a look at the brackets, Nikki Bella is going to be taking on Asuka. Anyways, what I usually use in Sony Vegas, I have sort of a setup here. I'm not entirely sure if this is what you're supposed to do, because I just sort of pick up on what other people do and tried to experiment for myself just to figure out what sounds good. And for the way that, like, the college dorm, there's like an echo effect. Well, not an effect, but it just like reverbs all over the room, because it's just the way that the room works. There's a lot of echo in it. I had to change up my settings a little bit because my original YouTube setting didn't work for the college dorm, because I still sounded kind of quiet. I thought my commentary sounded like trash. So I did have to make a few adjustments to that. I'll probably have to go back and adjust this YouTube one, so that way when I am making videos at my house, because right now I still use the college dorm one, just because I didn't add enough effects to this YouTube one. All I did was bring out the bass, when I should probably adjust some of the things over here, but that's something I'll have to experiment with for another time. This isn't, I don't know if this is going to be exactly the most in-depth sort of, not review, the most in-depth sort of tutorial. I'm just kind of showing you what I use. Things will differ for you depending on, you know, what you need, what your equipment is, what your setup is, but this is just kind of what I use, just to kind of give you a bit of an idea as to the process of editing that I use. So one thing that I didn't actually use in the Royal Rumble, but I do want to bring up anyways, because I do use a lot of promos in my videos. Well, when I say promos here, I'm not talking about the little video spots that I make to hype up the pay-per-views. In this case, I'm talking about actual segments with dialogue in it. So as you can see, here is a promo that I wrote for Cody Rhodes and Chris Jericho back in episode 16, I believe it was. And as you can see, the spacing on it is kind of weird, but I only do that because to try to prepare it for when I put it into Sony Vegas, because I only have so much space on screen to actually display the words. So I have to kind of cut it up into the little pieces here. And because, you know, I haven't sort of spaced a couple of lines just because that's all that'll fit in my little text box that I made. People have asked me, you know, how do you come up with storylines? How do you write storylines? Where do you get your ideas from? That's not something, like, I don't really know how to explain, like, how I get ideas for storylines. It's just kind of, it's a bit of inspiration from a bunch of different mediums, whether that's the WWE product, the past WWE stuff, just other YouTubers have given me ideas, just watching their videos and saying, hey, that's cool. I wonder if there's a way that I could kind of incorporate something similar to that. But as you can see, these are just some of the promos that I write for different things. I'm not going to show you that other one because that's a bit of a spoiler. So I'm not gonna go down to that one because I haven't made it that far yet, but just sort of things that I'm working on. But when it comes to actually booking a storyline, usually what I'll do, I have actually a document where I'm not gonna click it because that has spoilers galore in there, but I do have a file here where I have all of my pay-per-view matches sort of lined up. So if I were to open this document, you could see my WrestleMania plans, you could see my plans for the pay-per-view following WrestleMania. Usually the way that I work is I will sort of put out bullet points. So if I have an idea for a feud, usually I'll be like, okay, what's gonna happen at pay-per-view 1? And then after that I'll be like, okay, is it gonna get a second pay-per-view? Is it gonna get like a third pay-per-view? I'm completely missing keys here. But that's just sort of the way that I work, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps as I go along. At the moment, what I usually do, I don't have anything that I can actually show you because they're spoilers for the next upcoming month in Universe Mode because I deleted all of my plans for this month. But usually what I do, even right now, I do, as I just said, I plan out things in advance. So for the actual episodes, the regular shows, Raw and SmackDown, and main event, usually I'll try to plan them out not like a month in advance, because I only started really planning out each individual show just earlier this week. But usually I do try to have a bit of a plan for my episodes in advance. Sometimes I'll just record a match on a whim and just sort of throw it in just because I come up with it last minute and it seems to work. It seems to kind of add to the storyline or just add some extra depth to the video. But usually I have like a long-term plan. So if you're kind of wondering, well, how could I make storylines? Like, how should I book things? Usually what I do, I'll come up with a long-term plan. So like even right now, I've had ideas for WrestleMania for a long time, as I'm not sure if I've discussed any yet in Behind the Universe, but I definitely have plans to. But usually I'll plan out like on a pay-per-view by pay-per-view basis and then fill in the gaps as I go along. So like right now, I know what I'm doing for WrestleMania, but I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do in the build-up to WrestleMania. Although I have been working on it, so now I have more of an idea as to what I'm going to go with. But it's, in terms of the Raw, SmackDown main event shows, usually those will be kind of not necessarily on the fly. Like I don't just plan them as the show goes along, but usually they're more last minute. Whereas the pay-per-view stuff, I have planned out in advance. So like some of my WrestleMania matches I've had in the works for, heck, maybe even since WWE 2K15, since like Money in the Bank, Payback, that area. I had a couple of matches in mind. But even as it went along more towards like Survivor Series, I was starting to really fill out the card for WrestleMania. So I have plans in advance for pay-per-views. That way I'm not like planning out every single moment in advance, so then it's like if I change one thing, that's gonna screw everything else up. But usually I do have a fair amount of a plan in advance, and then I just kind of fill in the gaps as I go along. So it doesn't really tell you how to like get inspired, how to write a storyline per se, like how to get ideas for one, but it does sort of tell you like how I make my video, or how I make my storylines, and perhaps gives you a bit of an idea as to what kind of a process you could use when trying to figure out how to book a storyline. Okay, so now I can actually get into the meat of this video, and that is editing everything. There's actually not really a whole lot to talk about here. It's pretty basic. This was just an original. This was originally, if I go in here and take away the effects, if Sony Vegas wants to load it up for me here. I just threw in a couple of effects there, cookie cutter, sepia I just threw in there because I thought it would look cooler. But I just kind of threw that in there just for a bit of a visual aesthetic. But mainly what I do for pay-per-views and for regular episodes is it's just basically find a clip. Well, you record everything in WWE 2K17 or whatever game you're playing. Then it's just mainly a sort of, you find your footage, you split it, and you line it up in the timeline. It's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. As you can see here, there is a bit of an effect on this clip because with the way that at one point I had a clip from the old, not the old, but from the way that 2K17 likes to export their things and create a video. The quality, it drops automatically and it just doesn't look good. So what I did here, I just sort of zoomed in on the screen, so that way it just brings forward the cutscene. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but with the way that my footage records, the quality is not as good. There's sort of, if you look at it, there's kind of like some lines, some weird like motion lines along some of these parts. You can't, I mean, when you look at Finn Balor, it does look a little sort of blurry in the background when he was sort of far away. But if I move ahead, I know the one that I really noticed it on is the Sting John Cena cutscene. So I'll pull that one up real quick. It's kind of hard to see in Sony Vegas, but in the final video itself, if you go back and look at the Royal Rumble, you might kind of be able to tell that the footage is a little sort of blurry. That's just a result of zooming in on it. With other creators, I've seen them do it, and it's been completely fine. And it's not something that my recording software does, because I check to make sure I've adjusted with the quality settings, and that doesn't fix anything. So it's something, I don't know if my system isn't displaying WWE 2K17 at its maximum quality, so if anyone knows what that issue might be, if it's like a setting I have to change in my PlayStation, I don't honestly know, but the quality is a bit lowered, but it's either that. Well, I also do it this way as opposed to the creative video export, because creative video, it limits you to like 30 seconds of a clip. So when I have a cutscene that doesn't fit in the 30 seconds, then I have to either splice it together, or I just do it by zooming in on the clip, and that way I just have full access to it. It's just easier for me. Footage might not be the greatest, but until 2K sort of fixes their creative video feature, it's just what I'm gonna have to work with for right now. It's not really a big deal to me. Maybe it is to you, I don't know. I mean, it is sort of a deal. It is sort of an issue for me because I don't like having footage that isn't like the top visual quality that I could be working with, but unfortunately that's just what I have to deal with for the time being until I can figure out what exactly the issue is. But yeah, it's just a lot of splitting clips. Occasionally I have to use a crowd cutaway if I can't make a clean transition. So like right here, we're in a cutscene, and then that wasn't really going to transition well, so then we just had to kind of crowd cutaway and just sort of pretend that things happened off screen. Unfortunately, since this is a video game, it is more difficult to sort of pick up the pieces from if something gets botched, or if just trying to integrate something doesn't quite flow as cleanly as I would like. Crowd cutaways are the way to go. I don't like to use them as much anymore. When I first when I first sort of started taking inspiration from Delzinski's Saturday Night Main Event Universe Mode, I feel like I might have abused the crowd cutaways a bit too much. If you look back at Money in the Bank, especially, that was when it really sort of took off. But nowadays, I try to do more sort of like this, whereas you see the crowd, not the crowd, the camera just sort of zooms in a bit. They don't always line up perfectly on a frame-by-frame thing, but usually they work. If they don't work, then I'll just use a crowd cutaway, begrudgingly, because I don't like cutting away to the crowd. WWE has recently started doing that in their shows, and I have no idea why. They edit their stuff as if it's like a 2K17 thing, and I don't really know why they do that. But regardless, yeah, this is just basically how it works. As you can see, all the audio, you have to make sure that that's lined up. Usually, I split the audio from the video to work because that just works for me. Because sometimes, like, for example, here, where the match begins, and I need... The way that the game sometimes works, like, if I end up botching a match, and I have to restart the match, usually this is where I'll just start clean, and kind of just fade through there. So I'll have to sort of make sure that the audio fades through, and that's why I separate it, because that way I can kind of mess around with the audio a little bit. But then sometimes the game just sort of screws up on its own. Like, I'll have some blooper clips coming up in a future Behind the Universe video, and the game just does stupid stuff. It just is buggy, and if there's like a weird sort of like bug in the footage, I like to cut those out if I can avoid showing it, just because for visual consistency and for trying to maintain the atmosphere. It's just, I can't have a bug like that in the footage. So sometimes the game forces me to cut away like that, sometimes I just screw up and I need to fix that. But for the most part, it's just splitting clips, making sure that the footage flows nicely, there aren't any botches that you can't work with. Sometimes there might be a botch, so like if someone does a dive off the top rope and doesn't quite fully connect, usually I'll try to roll with those as long as it looks okay enough, because you can just sort of say, oh, well, he didn't quite hit his target, that's going to backfire on him because it's a high-risk move, something like that. But it doesn't always work out. Sometimes if I go for a move and it just, like, I hate, one thing that has recently been happening, and I don't know why, is that when you go to pick somebody up off the ground, your player will like back off and then just grab at air, and it looks stupid. So sometimes I have to cut those out, and sometimes I can just zoom in like I did in the previous match with Blake and Murphy, and I think I've done it here in this matchup. Or in this case, sometimes I'll do like a bit of a gradual zoom just so that way it's not a hard cut, like a hard zoom in on it, on whatever's going on. It doesn't just jump there. It all depends on how the footage works for me. You know, it's personal preference. For something like this, just a quick cut in. And it's also all about trying to figure out what will look the best when you're editing it all together. So sometimes the camera cuts away, and if there's a bit of a botch or something, you have to figure out when you want to cut the footage. So like here, this is actually two separate clips, but it wasn't necessarily that move was botched, but something after it or something before it was botched. So I do it that way. You have to find the right spot where you want to try to cut your footage. So usually if I can find a camera cutaway like this, where the camera angle changes, that is what I try to go for, because it looks the cleanest, because you can't even tell that there was an edit there. Like if you watch it play out, it looks like it just worked. It doesn't even look like there was an edit there, and that's usually what I try to go for, but it doesn't always work. Now there's one final subject that I wanted to talk on in this pay-per-view specifically, and that is masking. What is masking? Well, as you see here, this was not there. This replay screen, that was not there. This is all, I do custom replays for my pay-per-views because the game replays are terrible. So I'll go through and just take footage from the match and use it as replays. And as you can see here, I mean, if I don't have the replay graphic there, I have done custom stuff in the past, like Fastlane, I just threw an effect over the visuals and typed replay. But usually I like to take the the replay graphic from in-game, just because it looks cool. Like, that's a cool looking graphic. But how did I get that? How did I get it separate from the footage? Well, as you can see here, masking. So if I think I can hide that, yes. So as you can see, here is a clip, just a random sort of exhibition clip that I took. But what is this? This, oh, hold on, it just made me unclick from it. This is the mask. So originally I was gonna walk you through me masking out this roadblock sort of replay screen, but this one is gonna be a bit trickier for me. Oh, wait. Well, of course, this isn't a spoiler. Well, I mean, it kind of is, because Chad Gable, Chad Gable, Apollo Crews, they're not going to be on Roadblock. This is just exhibition gameplay. Or maybe they will be on Roadblock, who knows. Originally, I was going to mask this one out for you guys, but as you can see, there's this tiny little sliver right here. And I think there's also like another little bit right there, so that I can't just mask out a simple square. So I believe that that's gonna require multiple masks, and that's gonna be a bit time consuming, so I'm not gonna do that on screen because I don't want this video to drag on any longer than it already is. So instead, I'm gonna mask out this WrestleMania 31 replay graphic. Again, more exhibition gameplay, so... Oh, also, what I just did there. Make sure, if you're using Sony Vegas, I'm not sure if any other programs have this setting, make sure that you disable resample, because if you don't disable resample, it looks like crap. Like, if you look back on my older videos, maybe I'll throw in a clip here just to kind of show you the footage. What it does, when it resamples your video, it will, like, I'm not sure exactly what it does, but the footage isn't as clean. Like, it doesn't, there's like a bit of like a blur in the graphic. It's almost like each frame kind of tries to transition into the next one and it just doesn't look right. You can see it. You should be able to notice what it looks like. It's just not good. So always make sure that you disable resample. I didn't do that for quite some time. 2K15 was when I started to disable resampling. Part of the quality crapness was because my render settings were different. Because what I used to do, I would take, my footage was always like an MP4 when I record it from Elgato. Then I'd bring it into my program and I would end up converting it back to Windows Media video. And that conversion would cause a drop in quality, and then it would end up going up to YouTube, in which case it was converted back to MP4. But because I didn't know anything about what I was doing, usually I would go down here to Windows Media Video, I would go down to the HD, I'd click it, and then just render it like that. Render times were pretty bad because of the conversion, it was just not good. Now, I have my own sort of custom setting for MP4s. Just because some of this, like, it took me a little while to get it down right, but I figured out what I wanted to use, and I've used that since Payback in WWE 2K15, and it's worked out really well for me. But back to the masking. If you want to make your own mask, and I wanted to choose this one just because it's a pretty simple rectangle. I could have gone through and done the Royal Rumble one again, but I will need this mask for WrestleMania, so I figured why not? We'll kill two birds with one stone. I'll go ahead and knock it out now. So what you have to do is you want to go over here to your anchor tool, and then all you need to do is just click around. This is going to be a bit sloppy, but then I'm going to go through it in post, but you just kind of click around. Well, not go through it in post, but, you know, I'll fix it later. You just kind of click, get the mask that you want, and boom. Now, usually the way I'll do it, instead of positive, I want negative, and just like that, you have your mask. So, obviously, I would need to adjust it for like the replay graphic. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, but usually the way you want it, you want your replay graphic, you don't want the actual footage. So just switch it from positive to negative, and you're good. Alright, so I did screw up a little bit because I don't do this very often. Usually the only time I use masking is for a pay-per-view graphic like this, or in the case of the Royal Rumble, I did also use it for the countdown timers. So for this stuff that you see here, this is actually footage from an exhibition match that I had to take. I just simply cropped out the countdown timer. That's what I'm trying to say. I just took it from an actual footage of a match. And that is how we get this. And then I also I could have used the in-game audio for the timer, but I decided to go with something different. I just found sort of a stock countdown bit to throw in, just because I thought, with trying to overlay, because it would have also had crowd audio involved, I thought it just would have sounded a bit messy, so I just threw in this little sound bit that you heard in the actual video itself. And when it came to this, I could have cropped out and gotten a bunch of the in-game entry plaques. That's what I was originally gonna do, but I decided I would just make my own in Photoshop. It doesn't quite fit with this, I suppose, but I feel like it's close enough, and me trying to go into Photoshop and use a bunch of different effects to try to edit out the names and on such a tiny little graphic, I didn't think it was worth it. So I just made a little box, and that's just what I went with. I feel like it works. It looks good enough, I think. But ultimately, that sort of graphic, it wasn't gonna break the video because I had all this stuff going on in the match. As you can see, I did throw in a couple of highlight reel. Well, not really highlight reel, that's not what they call it. A couple of, like, or do they call it the highlight reel? I don't know. But as you can see, I did have to crop this. I had to crop this. I was trying to do like a anger Twitch effect, but I missed. Oh, shoot, and now that's... Yeah, always make sure that when you're messing around in a mask that you have whatever point you want selected. If you wanted to transition, you click somewhere else. This is just Sony Vegas. I know Final Cut has transforming and whatnot, and that kind of goes by the same thing. It works in keyframes. But this stupid... it's so annoying. I hope that they take that out next year, that you can actually preview the clip without having to do this, like, have a preview option that you can get rid of the menu, because otherwise I have to do like a weird zoom in effect that cuts it out, because otherwise it completely breaks the immersion. Like, why would you even... Why? I'm going back in to fix this, but I don't even know why I am. I'm about to delete all this footage anyway. Speaking of all of this footage, this right here, all of these 12 sessions it took for me to put that Royal Rumble match together. How many sessions did it take me to get the actual Royal Rumble video together? Well, 3. Everything else only took 3 sessions. The Royal Rumble match itself, it took 12. And I will show you why in just a moment. But the reason why I should have done this video a lot sooner, 65.1 gigabytes. All of that just raw recording footage. There you see his little countdown video that I used for the countdown graphic. But that was all for the Royal Rumble. And you want to know why it took me 12 matches, 12 sessions to record one match? Well, I will show you what the majority of my footage is. Welcome everyone to the Royal Rumble Tables Edition. That's right, we are home improvement dudes. We have to move all of these tables. Why? Because, well, for the Royal Rumble, if the referee was in the ring, wouldn't that sort of break the immersion of being in the Royal Rumble? So I had to do this. People had to move tables for everything. Everything. Every single clip. Every clip. If it wasn't a Battle Royal, which I did use a couple of those, everything else, I had to move the frickin' tables. So that's why, that's mainly, like, that's probably at least a third of the footage is just me moving tables so that I can actually get to what I need to do. So that is part of the reason why there is so much footage that I needed to cut down, was because I had to move tables. Tables. Joy. But yeah, then this is just a lot of extra stuff where I had to sort of cut down, try to crop things out so that way the visuals didn't clash when I would try to cut between different things like that. These were 2 different clips. Well, not 2 different clips, they were in the same match, but they were probably at different points. So like, You know what, let me just check. If I go in here and I... Actually, I could see it in the mask. Yeah, it just sort of, like, jumps. Well, no, it doesn't. That one doesn't, but there were other instances, I think, towards the end where there might have been separate matches. I like to just throw... I wanted to make it look kind of cinematic, so that's why I would throw in occasionally a couple of these highlight reel things. I probably won't always do that. It's just something a unique visual to sort of add in, so I figured I would just show that. But yeah, a lot of this entire Royal Rumble match, I don't think any of it was recorded in a... Well, no, not... I won't say that none of it was, because the ending part, I had to record a bit of it in the Royal Rumble just so I could get to this cutscene of someone winning and celebrating to point at the wrong WrestleMania sign because I'm using WrestleMania 31. But I could have, I guess, tried to like Photoshop it in there, but it would have... I'm not that great at Photoshop at the moment, so it probably would have looked like garbage. But that's really the only setback of this, is that... But I already had Fastlane where it showed the WrestleMania 31 thing, and I was already committed to that, so... I was a little stuck there. But, yeah. I did record one little bit in a Royal Rumble match, and that was just so I could get this. It was just the Cesaro HBK bit. And even that, like, the actual elimination was an exhibition clip, so I don't remember exactly what I did. But, anyways, that was breaking down the Royal Rumble. It was a bit of a mess, as I kind of expected it to be, but hopefully when I can edit this in post, it'll have some sort of a cohesive flow to it. I'm still jumping all over the place because I'm trying to make sure that I've covered all my bases. I think I'm good. I think I've discussed just about anything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I showed you about masking things and editing things. Yeah, usually when it comes to editing a match, usually it's just a couple of different a couple of crowd cutaways if nothing else works. If you can't get a good sort of zoom-in shot, or if you can't... If it just won't flow. Like, sometimes you can't just use a pan crop effect, or in Final Cut it's a transform effect. You can't just really do that if like, sometimes it just looks like crap, like there is no flow to it, and you do have to use a crowd cutaway, so... Sometimes you just can't, sometimes you have to. It just won't really flow. Sometimes, though, you get these cool little cinematic sort of shots, and then if there's a botch later on, that's a good place to always come back to. Usually these are kind of like my anchor shots when there's a cutaway, as long as I remember, because usually I don't plan out my matches beforehand. I'll go into it, maybe have a couple of spots that I'd like to do, I might know the finish, but usually I just kind of play it out and see how things go. And sometimes it's really difficult in that case because I don't have a match planned out in my head. So as I'm going through, I might end up scrapping a match. Like, I might go through and scrap an entire match. Like, I might be going for 10, 15 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes, and it's just not working. Like, it's not really the match. I don't feel like the match is very good, so sometimes I'll scrap it and just start over fresh. But sometimes it's just like one little blip in the match, and I can trace it back to a thing like this, where it's like, okay, I remember there was that one move that was used. There was one like sort of cutaway, so I should be able to tie it back to that. Sometimes there isn't a cutaway, and I try to tie it back to a specific moment, in which case that's when I have to use the crowd cutaways. But the moral of the story there is, don't be afraid to restart your matches if they look like garbage. Even back when I did simulations, I know the John Cena CM Punk match prior to WrestleMania in 2K15, that's the one that always stands out because I think I recorded for like an hour, because all the I'd had a mix of simulated and played matches that I tried to control, and they just kept coming out like crap. Like, the finish would end way earlier than it was supposed to, or the wrong person would win. So I just had to keep going back and redoing it until finally I got a take that I liked. Now that I actually edit matches, sometimes you can fix it, sometimes you can't. Sometimes, like, there are certain superstars I just don't really have a chemistry between the two of them. Like, I can't put on what I consider to be a spectacular match. I know, like, a while back, Christian and Ryback were two guys who I just couldn't really seem to connect with. I feel like their Survivor Series match still turned out pretty well. I just don't think that it was one of, like, the top tier matches that it perhaps could have been. And that comes down to me playing the matches. If you are simulating stuff, I know Murph's YT13, he does simulations. Well, he kind of does a mix, I think. I know Delzinski controls his, Brennan plays the simulations. Honestly, it all comes down to what you want. If you want to go in and try to go the extra mile, try to edit something to make it look like a cool production like this, well then that's, hopefully I've given you a bit, hopefully I've given you a few tips as to what you could do, how to put on a show like this for yourself. I know WrestleMania is probably going to be even big. No, why do I even say probably? WrestleMania is going to be bigger than the Royal Rumble. I would be surprised if WrestleMania doesn't go over 4 hours. So if you'd like me to take another stab at this again, if you want me to try to make another behind the scenes video for WrestleMania, maybe. Just let me know down in the comment section. Maybe I'll leave a card at the end of the video if I remember to do that. But yeah, if you want me to try to do another behind the scenes video like this, or, I mean, I guess I could try to do one for just a regular Universe Mode episode, but nothing really too eventful editing-wise usually happens there. Usually it's just kind of the same that I use in pay-per-views, and then the pay-per-views will have a little bit of extra, like this masking, because, I don't know, it's just, I don't really use replays in my regular shows. I don't feel a need to do that, because it just sort of slows everything down. Those episodes are supposed to be shorter, the pay-per-views are supposed to be this grand production, so that's why I throw in replays. I don't know, that's just the way that I do it. You can do things differently, that's all up to you. But anyways, if you'd like me to do that WrestleMania Behind the Universe episode, then let me know down in the comments. Maybe I will do that. I'm not going to do one for Roadblock, because Roadblock I don't think is going to be, like, with WrestleMania, there are a couple matches that I think are going to be really difficult to put together. Not going to spoil anything as to what they are. Let's just say that they're not going to be quite as easy as a straight-up one-on-one match. Like with Survivor Series, when I did the whole... If I still had my Survivor Series footage, I might go back and do a video on that. But I don't... Oh, that'd be on my old computer. That would be a really long loading. I might still have that footage, though. Oh, no. Hopefully I don't... I'm probably not going to make a video on that, though, just because all the loading times would be terrible, because it's all on my old computer. I could try to move it over to this one, but that's a lot of files to try to transfer over. That'd be a lot of memory that it would take up. And I already need to get rid of all of this. All of this. I need to clear some memory, some 61 plus gigabytes. But I hope you enjoyed I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, it was a bit all over the place, but that's kind of what I was expecting. Hopefully you still were able to take something noteworthy out of this. If you would like me to do that WrestleMania Behind the Universe video, then be sure to let me know down in the comment section, and I will probably give it a shot if all goes well, if hopefully nothing goes wrong. Oh, one thing I am now seeing on this mask, usually I'll put a feather effect to it. Whether it's in, out, or both, it all depends on what would look best. Yeah, I can't believe that I forgot to throw that in. But yeah, like there, that doesn't look very... Well, 2 is too much. Usually I'll use, like, sort of just a subtle feather effect just to make sure that it doesn't look like garbage. This one I might fade in. Did I say in? I meant out. That's what I meant. I'll work on it. I'll work on it. But yeah, masking, there's a bit of fine-tuning you have to do there. But now, that's going to be the end of this video. I'm repeating it again, but this is what happens when I go out when I don't have a script. WrestleMania video, if you want to see it, another Behind the Universe episode like this, I'll try to make that one a bit more structured, just because this was the first one. I was a little unsure of how I was going to go about it, but next time I'll have a bit of an idea as to what I should do, have a bit more of an idea of what I can talk about, and I might even actually go through the process of editing a match. Like, if you want me to kind of like reconstruct a video, maybe I could try to do that, or maybe not a whole video, but maybe like a match. Maybe I could try that. This video, I just knew I wouldn't have time, otherwise we'd go on. I've been recording for an hour. I don't know how much of this is gonna stick around as footage, but yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode. I'm not gonna drag it out any longer. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed. Keep on YouTubing.